The red leather.
It's the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast, where we talk about all things consensual non-monogamy, polyamory, swinging, and all things about how you can have a secure and sexy relationship. Now here's your hosts, Tara and Andre. Hey, Andre.
Hey, Tara. Hi, everybody.
Hi, welcome to the Let's Talk Polyamory podcast with Tara and Andre. I don't know about you, Andre, but I'm pretty excited about this episode, which is an up close and personal update on us a year after we decided to de-escalate our relationship. So we're going to get really personal today on how the journey has been for us in hopes that this is helpful to all of you out there. But first, for those of you who do not know us, I'm Tara Lynn Franco. I am a relationship and awesomeness coach.
And I'm Andre Turcotte. I'm a sex-positive registered psychotherapist and coach.
Yeah. And our passion is to help you create and maintain healthy and secure non-monogamous relationships, no matter how you do them. Monogamous ones too. We talk about all relationships here. And how to navigate some of those rough bits that come up as we've experienced ourselves, which is why we're here to talk to you about these things. We also love, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna add, I'm glad you mentioned the part about being non-monogamous, as in the name, Let's Talk Polyamory, but also about monogamous relationship. These are many of the things we talk about are universal, right? They are applicable to all types of relationships, and not just romantic ones.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I have friends and clients who have said that we should make our courses actually available to monogamous people because a lot of the same premises apply. So, yeah. So we also love, like we said, diving into conversations about all types of relationships, sexuality, identity, and inclusion. And in fact, we'll probably be talking a bit more about sexuality, right, Andre?
Yeah, without a doubt, we are. Well, yeah. Yes, indeed.
Yes. We're taking some courses.
Yeah, we're taking some courses on sexology, and it's the fascinating and ever-growing field of sexology and how it affects how we look at ourselves as sexual beings and how we relate to others and our relating styles, so much of who we are as sexual creatures.
Amazing. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I feel like anytime I take a course or do something like that, I always learn something new, and it always brings up great conversations between you and I as well. So that's awesome. So if you're just watching our podcast and you've just discovered us, we share obviously advice and strategies through the podcast. We also share a lot of free resources. So if you go into past episodes, you'll see links to download free worksheets and stuff. We also work directly with people through coaching and therapy. And we have some programs, including our Poly Newbies digital course. And we're really excited because we're going to be opening up a new cohort of our Polyamory Mastery program. And we haven't run that in a while, and we're super excited because we're going to add some new content. So some of that is going to be delivered live. So that's a very special thing this round. And of course, it includes coaching with us in a group setting, which is pretty awesome. So we're looking for some people to join us in that. And so we'll make sure we put a link in the resources on how to do that.
Awesome.
Awesome. Okay. So now on to today's topic. So it was funny when we were thinking about what to do for this podcast episode, I happened to get reminded, probably by Facebook, that it was a year ago, almost to the day, that we decided to de-escalate our relationship. And, well, what's that?
Well, I'm just thinking it's a crazy thing for the powers that be to remind you of, right? So maybe it's not always just a celebration. Maybe it's not always the wonderful things. Maybe, unfortunately, it might be some other things that aren't so wonderful, like deaths or otherwise. But in this case, is there an automatic impression that de-escalating is a negative thing? And we'll dive into that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was going and looking in to see what videos were posted up on the Poly Diaries YouTube page, and I came across our two videos from last year. So we're going to, our thought journals that we recorded at the time. And so we'll make sure we share those in the show notes. But those are the two there. And then we also recorded a podcast at the time. So, yeah. Okay. So, whoops. I meant to stop showing that. There we go. There we are. All right. So de-escalation, really briefly, is when you decide to reduce the level of intimacy or connection in a relationship. And it's not a common concept. And so, of course, you may recall at the time, I definitely had friends and family that were like, what? Like, what are you doing? Are you breaking up? Are you okay? Is there someone else? Do you still love each other? And so we're going to start by just giving you a bit of an overview of what de-escalation is, where we were last year, and then talk about where we are now. So.
You know, Tara, as you say that, thinking again about the associations with the word de-escalation, and makes me think of when there are times when reporting goes on about conflicts and how they say there's an escalation in the conflict, right? There's a war going on. And if we should de-escalate the conflict, well, that's actually a good thing. So could we also, while we're listening to this, bear in mind of the possible positives to this and what we're motivating us one way or the other?
Yeah, and in fact, there was a lot of positive reasons for us to do it. Maybe not so visible at first for some of us. I'll point the finger at me. But yeah, there are definitely some great outcomes. I'm excited to share some of those things with you. Because I think, to your point, prior to becoming polyamorous, I just thought that there was two options in relationships. So break up or stay together. And there was no such thing as people had the let's just be friends thing, but that was still, I would say, in most cases, breaking up, not how we view it, but because of the way we relate. But in my own experience, being monogamous for most of my life, that was what I thought the options were. And
yeah, it's so interesting because that makes me think immediately of the relationship escalator, right? Where we start dating each other, and then we might start going steady, and then we could possibly live together. But there's a kind of automatic trajectory that we kind of get on, and we go to it. But do we ever stop to consider what it would be like to have discussions before entering into these things? And are there assumptions, automatic assumptions that go with it? So if we live together, does that mean that we're automatically heading towards, or will probably go towards marriage? And could we ever live together for some time and then maybe take a break from it and come back together? And then, or is it just assume that, well, once you live together, you're just going to be living together, and the only thing that would interrupt that would be if things go south and you want to break up because it's not going well?
I know we move past a bit, but I love when you give the analogy of the tennis analogy in terms of the relationship escalator. I think we haven't talked about it in a while. So would you mind sharing that analogy?
So if you've heard it before, this is a good time to take a bathroom break or do whatever, or maybe listen to it again. And if you haven't heard about it before, it goes something like this. So we say that we like playing tennis, and then one day we go out to the tennis court and we find somebody to play with, and we play well together, and we say, wow, that was such a great time. Would you like to play tennis again on Tuesday? And they play tennis with us, and we play tennis with them, and it goes well. And we say, hey, how about getting together and playing tennis again on this weekend? And we do that. And then at one point, we're playing so well together, we say, well, you know what? I like playing tennis with you so much. I actually would prefer that you don't play tennis with anybody else. It would seem absurd. Well, often that's similar to what happens in romantic relationships. We start dating with each other, and then we say, well, I like dating with you so much, I wouldn't feel comfortable if you were dating with somebody else. So maybe it's something to, that kind of analogy is something to keep in mind. My playing tennis with somebody else doesn't necessarily have to take away from our tennis time together, just as our dating other people might not decrease the value of our seeing each other. In fact, it might increase it. I might date or play tennis with others and realize, well, I like their backhand, but I also like your forehand. So we'll see.
And as you said, if you make a change in that relationship escalator, it then feels like a breakup. And I love this. It's not going to show up as a GIF. I don't know. I couldn't get it working. But this little gift from Carrie from Sex and the City. If you love someone and break up, where does the love go? And I think that's what people assume. Like, you change, what if you could change the relationship instead and keep things you like and alter the rest? And I think that's where de-escalation comes in.
Right. But to that point also, I want to make the distinction between a breakup and a de-escalation. So
Yes,
breakup can
please.
be, well, that's it. We go from being together, a thing, a unit, and now we've broken up. There's no more of us. Whereas de-escalation could say, well, we are a thing, we are a relationship, in a relationship, and there's a modification to it. It's going to shift. It's going to change. So there's still some interaction with each other.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious, actually, if you are watching on Spotify, I think maybe on Apple too, you can put some comments in. But I'd love to know, or in our group, our Let's Talk Polyamory group, if people have de-escalated a relationship before, how it went, and all that stuff. Because I think it's a really interesting topic and concept that people don't talk about much.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
and what might have prompted you, or were you the instigator or the recipient of it, or was it mutual, or maybe you've never considered it before, and would you benefit at all from it? And we'll speak to some of the possible benefits of doing such a thing.
Yeah, and for us, it wasn't a breakup. It was more about wanting to exercise and find autonomy and strength. Like break sort of that cycle of maybe some codependence that happens when you become a couple, but also bring more self-awareness to ourselves. And, that's that. So as we mentioned before, de-escalating is when you reduce or change the level of intimacy, commitment, or connection in a relationship. So it can be, like I said, a change. It can be emotional, physical, financial. It could be other things as well. And it's usually intentional and consensual, but sometimes it can be sudden or unexpected and initiated by one person. So I would say, we'll get into this a bit more about our story, but I think for me, it was a bit of a surprise despite circumstances. Like I said, we'll go into it in a second, but yeah, so it's, the idea is that it is a consensual thing, and it's discussed and sort of decided upon how you will change your relationship. And so let's talk a bit really quickly review. People can watch our earlier podcast, episode 16 in season 1, where we talked about this in detail. But let's talk about some of the reasons people might de-escalate a relationship.
I also want to say that since we are being very candid and speaking from a personal way, that I was the one that instigated this. Instigate? Interesting. But I want to applaud your bravery in being open and receptive to it. And I guess in a way, you really don't have a choice because the other person is announcing their desire, their position. But how you might have, and I would have definitely reacted in fear. I would have most likely felt it as though it was a threat to our relationship, and I might have felt abandoned by it. I would have felt threatened by it. But how you were able to remain present and open, and how we were able to benefit from this modification, from this change in our way of relating.
For anybody that's watching the video of this, you could see me smiling because maybe I was open to it eventually, but not right away, if you recall. So some of the reasons, like, I don't like to say positive and negative, but like the reason someone might want to de-escalate or even break up a relationship can be because of shortcomings in the relationship. And I'm not saying these are things that were us, these are just general. We're talking generally now. So shortcomings in the relationship, or incompatibility, or something else. Maybe.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's so interesting to me because while I might love you or someone and really enjoy spending time, are we, for example, compatible in our diet, or in our the hours that we keep, or our work ethics, or the way we live together, right? So you might have a desire to be with that person, but are you actually compatible? Or do you feel, well, I have to because of our living situation, or I have to because this is how we relate, and it doesn't seem to be viable in any other relationship style. So it's something to keep in mind.
That's a good point, because someone can think like, oh, if we don't like living together, that means that we shouldn't be together. And I don't think that those two need to be equal. Like you can love someone, you could love being with them, but not want to live with them or want to live independently. Like a lot of people who meet people later in life and have lived on their own for a long time have a time living with somebody else, especially if there's other situations like kids or exes or just general, you're used to living on your own and being independent. And I think that's fine. I mean, that's the circumstance for me. I think I love living with you some of the time, but not all the time.
Yeah. And aren't we fortunate that we are able to make that decision, and it doesn't fall on us that we are in a place of privilege in that sense. I love that we have so much gratitude in our relationship, but I'm glad that you make this distinction about it not only being perhaps not wanting to live with the other person, but wanting to live by ourselves. So it's not necessarily a rejection of the other, but maybe a preference for being autonomous in that sense.
Yeah, so being autonomous and independent, breaking the cycle of codependence that often happens when you get in a coupled relationship, feeling more like you again. I think that's some of what we lose when we meet someone. Like we're so excited to be with someone and spend time together and all that. But over time, we sort of start to blend, I think. And, I think you lose that excitement of the other person because you know each other so well, and your interests are now combined, you're doing things together all the time, and it kind of breaks that excitement.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I think that was really what motivated me to want to modify the relationship, that I had come to recognize how dependent I was becoming upon you, and not through your own, not through your doing, but through my own desire. It's easy to default to you. It's easy to default to the other person. And we might take on these roles, which we did. And I found myself becoming less independent as I was before and more dependent on you, not only emotionally, but in daily transactions. And I became aware of that. And even though it might in some ways point to my attachment style, it goes beyond that. It's simply a question of my wanting to feel as though I am still my own person and not simply a part of this thing that became bigger than me. So it was a way of kind of recalibrating myself and feeling as though, well, I'm not needing or dependent upon you, but wanting to be with you. And perhaps I could have done that in other ways, but at that time, it felt necessary to do this, to kind of reclaim myself.
Yeah. And people don't have to do what we do and live in completely different cities and different homes. You can find the space, the personal space and that sort of thing, intentional time and all that, but it does take some work. That's part of what we talk about in our programs as well, is how you have that and how you create those spaces while still being together. Because, if you're a family and have kids and stuff like that, yeah, sure, you want to live together in the same home, but you still need to be intentional about your time and being independent and keeping that excitement going in your relationships.
Yeah, those are excellent points, Sarah. You're so right. It's not so much about the physical part or the geographical aspect of it, but it's the inside job, the psychic part. How am I able to reclaim or maintain my own sense of being complete and whole? And what measures can I take to ensure that? How can I find ways of going about and doing my own thing? So for example, if I always think that you and I are going to spend every evening together, am I creating these scenarios where it's going to be this automatic assumption? And in doing so, am I denying my own time by myself? Whereas on the other side of it, could I still find ways of developing or maintaining my own self-interest, my own hobbies, my own way of being, where I am okay without the other, and then okay to come together again?
Yeah, and in fact, you have done that. So we'll talk about that too. So some reasons people want to de-escalate or even break up is like things that have become intolerable, right? It may feel like it's too much work. You may feel like you're arguing more than enjoying each other. There can be broken rules or boundaries. There may be different interests, sexual or non-sexual, that are driving the decision. Needs not being met, bored, lonely, feeling more like friends than lovers. But some people just want to de-escalate because they want to continue the love and emotional connection, but not the sexual one. That's another one. So go ahead.
Well, or they want to maintain the sexual, but not the emotional one.
Yes.
I wonder, as we say this, about maybe I was recognizing how I had become dependent on you, and we'll use just a hypothetical, but what if I come to realize that my partner or partners are dependent upon me? Am I wanting to maintain that? Because in a sense, it creates a sense of security for me. If I know the other
Ooh.
person is needing me, could I resist having them dependent upon me, even though it serves me, there's a secondary gain to it?
Well, yeah, if your love language is giving gifts or acts of service, then de-escalating might actually be more difficult, right? And I'd say that is a way that I like to give love, is through acts of service. So
Mm.
it's something to be aware of, how that might impact you should you change the nature of your relationship. So
And it's also interesting when and if there is a modification to this, a de-escalation in this case, can I resist feeling as though it's a rejection of myself, that there's something about me that's not good enough, compared to recognizing that perhaps the other person desires or feels a need or has a longing for movement, of having a different way of relating. So can we reject the personalization of it? Or, and maybe there is something to that. Maybe there is something that is not quite right, that could stand some self-reflection and some modification as well.
yeah. So some of the things people have to consider, I think, when this happens is like, can I move out without there being a breakup? Can I move back in again? Can we make agreements around how we might live together, like for a short time, or for a longer time? Like, does it have to be a certain way? And I think, like you said, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. De-escalation, for us at least, and for a lot of people, helps. They do say distance makes the heart grow fonder, right? And I think it has.
Yeah. It's interesting also is what about the implications or a feedback that we might get from friends, family, and society? So if we move in together, do people think like, oh, wow, like it's getting serious? Like you guys, I wonder when you're going to get married. And if we were to move out, is there another implication like, oh, like, it's gone south, like, I'm sorry to hear that. And then what if we decide, well, our style is going to be, we're going to be closer together for some, and then be a little bit distant from each other for some, I'm talking physically, and then back and forth? Or would people receive that as kind of perverse in some way? So, make up your mind. Either you're in it or you're out of it. Like, what's going on here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Can
I
we
think
resist the norm?
I think friends and family, the reaction to us, even like, because we recorded a whole podcast on de-escalation, was like, what the hell? Like, how does this actually work? And people still, like, I think, are like, oh, how do you live in two places? That's kind of weird. Are you guys really just broken up and you're just kind of like loosey dating every once in a while? But I don't feel that way. I feel like our level of commitment is the same, if not more. It's just different the way we relate. But it's funny how living together, being in proximity, seems so important to other people.
It's interesting also. I wonder if the people in your camp, the people who love you, your friends, family, whoever, might have wanted to villainize me. It's like, wow, what's going on with him? Why is he doing this to you? As a part to saying, I'm wanting to reclaim part of myself. I'm wanting to make sure that I am not falling on you as a default and becoming dependent upon you, but wanting to maintain my own autonomy.
Yeah, and I mean that question did definitely come up, because I was sad at first and upset. It's like, why did he do this to you? And someone I'm very close to didn't believe me when I said, oh yeah, I agree with this decision. I'm okay with it. I feel good about it. Didn't believe me. Thought I was like full of shit. Because it's not the norm. It's not the thing people do. It's very hard to understand. And I had to explain a couple things and why I was good with it, and why I was good. I was glad that actually you did it. It took me a little bit of time to figure that one out. But
Tara, it makes me think back to this idea of in monogamy. Quite often, once people get married, there's an assumption that they're going to cohabitate. And then they do that, and often it goes well, but sometimes maybe they need a bit of space. And would it then be kind of looked at, or would be an implication that things are going less well if they were to not cohabitate? But might it also serve them well? Would they actually be better off in sometimes to have some time apart or to live apart? And yet it doesn't seem as though it is very common. So that automatic assumption that we're going to marry and then live together, it's kind of like this construct that we're thrown into, but never really asked, well, is that optimal for us? And is it open to any type of variable, any other way of being other than what's automatically put upon us?
Yeah, and even if people do decide to live together and they have separate bedrooms, people are like, why do you have separate bedrooms? Do you not love each other? Like, what does that mean? It has some great meaning. But as we all know, we all sleep differently. Some of us are better sleeping alone, and that's cool,
Mhm. Well, what about then if we do have separate beds or separate bedrooms, that on occasion we come together? So the
Mhm.
coming together would seem like a positive. And if we were to then say, well, I'm going to go back and sleep in my own bed, is that in any way viewed as a negative, or is it like a relief and saying, yeah, that's good. I would enjoy that you advocate for yourself and you express your preference to sleep alone.
Yeah, and we did that on a recent trip, right? You were having some trouble sleeping and it was disrupting me. And so the places we rented happened to have a room with two beds, and we slept in separate beds on the trip. And we still had fun. Like, it doesn't mean anything. It's nothing bad. It just, the quality of sleep was important. And, I'm a light sleeper, so it was making it difficult for me to sleep, and that thus enjoy the trip a little bit less. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
But I did find myself looking for you on occasion,
I
and maybe I
know.
was missing you initially, but then it also occurs to me that I am able to tolerate that and sleep on my own and benefit from sleeping. And that when we did get together to sleep again, I enjoyed it that much more, perhaps.
Yeah. I do too. I love sleeping with you, but I do enjoy sleeping alone from time to time. So, one of the things we talked about last time, which I think you made a really good point, is this something we should introduce when we first start to get together with someone? Like, should things change, or can we keep this at a certain level? Or if this happens, what do you think about de-escalating of the
Mm.
relationship, and what do you think about that?
Yeah, again, it comes back to the very basis of this communication, communication, communication. Can we have open and honest conversations in the beginning, in the middle, and towards the end of the relationship? Can we talk about everything? Can we say everything? And would we be better served if we were able to explore this? Maybe we never go for some of these options, but can we at least talk about them and be open to the idea that it could be some way other than what it is, or that other possibilities might exist?
Yeah, and without that sort of bruise to the ego and not taking it personally, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think of the very easy example of when you might say, well, I'm going to go for a walk with my friend or by myself, or I'm going to go to the movies, or I might say to you, I'm going to go play hockey. Do we automatically interpret that as, oh, the person doesn't want to be with me? Or do we see it as,
Mm.
well, that's actually good. They're able to do their thing and they feel replenished. I'm able to do my thing. Can we resist the temptation of feeling as though it's a rejection of self, that our ego doesn't have to feel bruised in any way?
Yeah, and I think that's an important first step in any relationship, is
Mm.
recognizing that there has to be that um, disentanglement, as you said. Like, there has to be some personal time, and keeping things, your independence in some ways. I think Esther Perel said, I can't remember her quote. Maybe you know the quote about familiarity is the killer of desire, or something like that. I don't know. I can't remember the exact one, but there's a really good quote, but basically speaks to that, is that we become too familiar with ourselves, and we sort of, it lessens the erotic nature of our relationship. And
Mm.
so keeping that independence and our self as self is important to that
So
aspect of our relationship.
absolutely. So when we become we, do I lose the I or me? Can I
Exactly.
maintain being this individual who comes together with another or others and still have myself feeling as though I am uh, full, without feeling as though I'm only complete when I'm with the other person?
Mhm. And I think this is one of the benefits of being polyamorous, is a different way of looking at relationships, that relationships can be different things. They don't all have to be the same. And so it speaks to this idea that, yeah, you can decide at any moment in time how you wish your relationship to be, and it doesn't have a particular meaning, unless you want it to be, on what it is.
Mhm.
So we've sort of teased a bit and hinted around our decision to de-escalate. So should we talk about that now, or was there something you wanted to say? You were looked like you were ready to jump in.
Well, just like a little disclaimer, though, we're not poo-pooing being coupled or being in, committed, loving relationship. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that it was something that we decided, well, I instigated, that we were going to modify how we were together. So part of it has to do, I guess, with my attachment style, the idea that we were somewhat distant, and how I might have been kind of longing for you, but not missing you in a way, but feeling as though, when are you going to come back, and wanting to, I guess, in a sense, protect myself from that, feeling as though, well, am I overly invested in you or the relationship? And do I feel as though something's missing when you're not there? And missing somebody is a wonderful thing, but it didn't feel well emotionally at that time, right? So I think part of it also was my recognizing that I had become, in many ways, dependent upon you. I had lost part of my autonomy. I had lost part of my independence, and that I would go to you automatically, by default, almost taking you for granted. Even though we have a high level of gratitude in our relationship, I was there thinking that, well, I couldn't do it without you in some sense, right? That I was going to need you for this. And yet, before I met you, I was independent, strong, successful man. So how did I kind of become this dependent person upon you? And how could I reclaim that? So de-escalating it, making some room for greater independence, allowed me to recognize and recapture that feeling that I was more complete. I was more of an individual without having you to complete me. And that I could then come to you by choice, rather than feeling as though I had to come to you by need or dependence.
Yeah, I think, my recollection of the time was, I think you felt very sort of doubtful in yourself, like you underestimated your skills and what you were able to do on your own. And, and then on the flip side of that, I felt that I had to be there. I had to drop everything as soon as you needed it, because sometimes because you were afraid of doing a particular task, because maybe you thought you weren't skilled at it, or you weren't going to do a good job, or you didn't know how to do it, you sometimes left things to the last minute. And so then I felt that I would have to drop whatever I was doing at that moment and help you with it. And then I became, this is what I recognize now. This is not my initial reaction to you suggesting it, but what I recognize now is that I had become resentful of you and frustrated that I had to drop things that were important to me to help you, because you hadn't done what you needed to do on time. And so there was a bit of low level, I would say, tension and maybe a bit of resentment on my part because of that. Having said all that, my reaction to you, if you recall, was I was a little bit hurt and angry because, I wasn't really woke to the idea of de-escalation. And, it, as my Poly Diaries entry suggested at the time that you mentioned this, I was actually in Toronto, and I said to you, "What? I'm going to get on a train right now and come right there and pack all my stuff and take my car," because you were borrowing my car to go to hockey and stuff like that. I didn't need my car in Toronto. I saw it as our car. And so I was really like, I'm just going to damn the torpedo now. And after you calmed me down, I was like, you're like, well, maybe let's just take a moment. And then, we continued to speak about it. And then I came I think a week or so later, and then we continued to sort out what the process would look like.
In all fairness, I think that I might have handled it differently as well. I wish I would have handled it a bit differently, and really spoken more about what was prompting me, how I had come to recognize my level of dependence upon you, or more to the point, how I was not as confident in doing things. Like you alluded to, a lot of the admin stuff you were just much better at. And by your being better, I would then hand it over to you. And I would say, well, could you help me with this? And you would end up doing it. And that dependence scared me. Whereas then I was able to resist that, as I am now, and say, well, you know what? I've got this. I can figure this out. And maybe it's not done quite as well as you might do, but it's still able to be done. I recognize that I'm able to do this. So if I would have, I think, had greater insight at that point, I could have related it in that way. That might have invited you to see it as it being not a rejection of you, but as a reclaiming of me.
Yeah. And I think part of maybe your underlying strategy was for me to be hurt and angry at you, or maybe angry at you, so that I don't know. I had a thought, like I was thinking about it just as you were speaking, and it was almost safer maybe for me to be angry at you because of this. Maybe you wanted me to. I don't know.
Oh, that's interesting. Then it makes me think of, speaking of the anger, about how you might want to take back your prizes, like your car, for example. Is that a good way of punishing me out of your anger?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think to your point about me being better at certain things and me sharing that I become resentful of it, it's so different now, right? Like, let's take yesterday for an example. There was something that you needed to do that took some time. And so you asked, what you do now is you'll try something, you'll get started, and then you'll say to me, hey, Tara, can I might need your help with something a little bit later. When might you have time? You completely change your approach in it. So then I can go like, oh yeah, I can help you now. I can help you later. Or like yesterday, I was like, okay, what are you doing? Okay, let's just do it together. And I didn't feel any resentment or any concern or anything like that. It's like totally shifted that interaction of doing things together. So I think that's important.
It sure is. Yeah.
Yeah. So at the time, I did originally take it as a bit of scary and a bit of a loss. And I was quite upset when I look back on it. And I think maybe this is part of the reason for me, I thought that we should do a podcast on it, partly because people don't talk about it very often, but also I think that was a way of me getting my mind around this and what it means and why it's important and how it doesn't change some of the important things of our life in our life and how it can actually be beneficial. So for me, after doing that podcast, I was actually a little hopeful and I felt maybe a bit of relief. And I knew in my heart that we had been arguing more and getting a little bit annoyed with each other. Our communication skills, you may recall, had started to tank a little bit. We still are good. We're good communicators, but we weren't as good. I think we were sort of grating on each other. I was personally feeling overwhelmed by everything that was sort of going on. I was trying to build our business and my coaching practice, but also do other things. And, I think that was causing me a lot of stress. And I think so when you did ask me to help you, or when I was there in Montreal and we were doing stuff together, sometimes it felt like I just didn't have time to do all the things I needed to do. And so I think changing sort of the nature of our relationship and maybe me spending a bit more time in Toronto or on a more regular schedule was helpful in me being able to decide when I was going to work and when I was going to have fun time and that sort of thing. So.
But in all fairness, I can appreciate your part in it too. If I felt as though somebody were dependent upon me or automatically assuming that I was going to do these things for them, I might feel some degree of resentment. And it might not come across as my lovingly helping them. I might be helping them, but with a little bit of passive aggressiveness towards it.
Oh, yeah. I was not lovingly helping you. I was getting annoyed and I'd be just like, let me just do it. Andre. And then I would make, like you said, some passive aggressive comment about it. You know what I mean? And it would upset you because you're like, I don't want you to help me, or I'm not going to ask for your help if you're not going to do it lovingly. And then that would annoy me even more.
But see, it was a teaching point, a learning opportunity here that I did recognize. Well, I am going to automatically by default that you'll do it and you'll take care of this, and I'll put you in this role as the rescuer or the mommy or whatever it is. and how I could resist that and say, well, wait a second, it should reasonably be within my own capacities to figure some of this or most of this out. Not to say that we can never ask the other person for assistance or help, but it should not be a given and automatic to the point where it can create resentment or fear of asking the other person.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we grew on both those sides.
Yeah. I think for me too, I felt a bit unsettled, I think, and I missed my home in Toronto. I love being in Montreal. I love your place. I love our friends there and our community and everything. But it felt like I was always coming there and you weren't coming here as much. So if I wanted to see you, I had to go there. So that was a little bit of extra pressure for me too.
Right. You know, it's interesting, thinking back to the idea of cohabitating and the relationship escalator. At one point early on in our relationship, we were, quite excited to be with each other. Not that we're not now, but, this whole thing was still fresh and new. We had kind of spoken about the idea of potentially living together. And you quickly said, no, I would not want to live with you or anybody. And I will admit my ego was taken back a little bit. I was like, wow, why not? Like, what's wrong? As though it was the automatic, the given, the trajectory that we would automatically go on. So maybe at one point we will end up living together. And then maybe at one point we will decide again that we're not going to live together forever, but do it in chunks that seem more inviting or more interesting. It's kind of like when we go on a vacation, we don't say, well, we're going to go on a vacation forever and we're going to always share a hotel room. We go on it for a certain amount of time. And there's an assumption that after that, we will not be on vacation. And that seems okay too.
Yeah, one of the things I'm excited about, I've always been excited about, and why I decided to start coaching and, doing this sort of digital nomad thing is I want to be able to travel with you and spend big chunks of time away, like a month at a time and that sort of thing, as opposed to being tied down to a place. Like right now, I feel a little tied down here because I have some commitments that require me to be in Toronto. But once I can release myself of those, I'm excited about the possibility of being in either place, spending time in another country for a while. We always love traveling and adventures together. And yeah, I'm excited for that part of our life. So yeah. So let's catch everybody up on what's happened since. I mean, we've talked a little bit about it, but there's been both some practical and I think some emotional changes. So I think practically, I spend probably more time in Ontario than I had been. And I'm trying to get to a regular schedule so it doesn't feel like I'm bouncing around so much. I think that was another thing I was feeling last year, is that I was bouncing, between the two places. That was causing that unsettled. What's the word?
Unsettled.
The producers are going to have to cut that part out.
Yes. How are we doing on time?
Huh?
How are we doing on time?
We're doing
minutes.
great.
Okay. All right.
So, and you've been on your own, I guess, more in Montreal. And how's that experience practically been for you?
Well, to give some insight into it, to frame it, I think there was, you got to consider where I was coming from as well. So I came to Montreal. The catalyst was, in a big part, to be with my mother. And then she died shortly after I moved here. And then my relationship with my other partner took a big change in direction. Mm-hmm. It was also modified. And then your coming and going also was different than when we lived in the same city. So there was a lot going on there. And there was a feeling of loss and a void. And my feeling that I was wanting to have you closer to kind of offset those feelings scared me, that I would be like becoming emotionally dependent upon you, as opposed to, again, feeling more self-sufficient, being okay being without, and then inviting greater coexistence rather than I'm drowning and I need to grab onto you or the other to kind of rescue me. So that's changed a great deal. And now it does feel as though I have reclaimed my own sense of self, my own feeling more complete and now I invite you to come as opposed to needing you to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And I think for me, I felt the freeing up of like actual time and emotional space for myself. Um, I think I felt like I had let go with some of my friendships here in Ontario because I was trying to do that balancing act. I never knew when I was coming and going. And then so I wouldn't make plans. And so even when I was in Toronto, I wasn't necessarily spending time with friends. And so I think trying to be a bit more scheduled about when I'm here and not here has allowed me to, nurture those friendships again and also have time to myself as well.
Mhm.
And I feel when I'm here in Toronto, I feel less guilty about prioritizing work or deciding how I'm going to spend my time.
Mhm.
I'm sort of responsible for myself. And that feels good. Not that you require me to be responsible for you, but when I'm there, I enjoy making us food, doing things together, and all that stuff. So, my time is spent differently. So when I'm here, I'm just taking care of me mostly, which is
So is that to
good.
say that you, when you're in Toronto, you might have felt guilty for not being in Montreal in some way?
Yeah, in some ways. Or when
Mm.
I'm in Montreal, having
Mm.
to be more with you, right? Because of how you were feeling and that sort of thing, and making sure, not that we don't do that now, we totally do that now. In fact, I think that's one of the benefits that's happened is that when we are in Montreal together or in Toronto together, we have very intentional time together. It's like quality time. It's not like
Mhm.
we're just going through the motions of work and day and, cohabitating. I was only here in Montreal. I just got back to Toronto last night. It was actually hard to leave. I was missing you like the moment I stepped into the train station. You know what I mean? Because we had such a great week. It's hard to believe it was just a week because we did so many
Mm.
fun things. Like we had like 3 dates in a row. We went out on walks, and just spent some really good quality time together. So it felt very full and rich. So I think that it's brought that life back into the relationship for me, at least.
It makes me think again about people who do cohabitate and how they are able to reinvite themselves, how they are able to go on dates, how they are able to kind of freshen it up and not take things for granted, not automatically assume, but they can find the excitement with being each other, how they are able to create these dates that are going to lead to discovery, lead to a new way of being with each other.
Yeah, and you created an awesome surprise date for me on, I think it was Friday night, right? Friday night,
Mhm.
because Saturday it rained, right? So Friday night, you planned it all completely, didn't tell me what we were doing, and went out, and it was like amazing little adventure. And what you were just saying reminded me of it because as we were riding back after we rode through this really cool neighborhood and we were looking at the big houses and stuff like that, and we were joking, saying like, oh, we can maybe live together in a house like this. We could have our own floors, we can have an office, you know what I mean? And it's kind of funny the way we look at living together and how we might still want to have those personal like spaces to
Mm.
ourselves. I think that's cool. I'm glad we're kind of on the same page with that.
Yeah, but when we look at those big houses, they physically allow for having our own space. But how can we psychically,
Mm.
emotionally have our own space and feel as though it's quite okay if we are in close proximity physically?
Yeah, I think we still need to plan and do things separately and,
Mhm.
and come together intentionally. One of my friends a long time ago had said to me that, if he ever had his own house with a partner, he would want to have his own bedroom, but then they, have a sex room, he said. And so like a special intimacy enjoyment room that would just be for that purpose. And I thought that was
Fun.
at the time, I thought it was like, wow, that's a really interesting concept. But now I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be super fun. Imagine what you could put in
Mhm.
that room. So I think like the big thing that this time has done in the past year is I don't know, I feel like it strengthened our relationship and we're intentionally choosing to be together rather than defaulting to it.
I agree totally. Yeah, it does feel um, more, in a sense, inviting. We come together more as two individuals, for myself, rather than feeling as though I was in some way incomplete when you weren't with me.
Yeah, and choosing that time together, that choice, constantly choosing each other. It's like the idea around polyamory, people don't understand is like, but you don't get it. We actually intentionally choose each other over and over again. It's like very affirming. And I think this experience has been super affirming to me too.
Yeah, isn't that an amazing phenomena that you could go with somebody else as you are able to do at any time, but then you choose to come back to the other person, and it is affirming that you know that your partner can go or does go with other, but they come to be with you again, not out of any kind of contract, but out of choice.
Exactly. So, yeah. So I think that's a great way to end. I think, de-escalation doesn't need to mean detachment. It can actually lead to more intimacy, as we've experienced. And so, even if this isn't something on your radar, people might want to consider, like, how is your relationship going? Is it time for a relationship review and looking at how you interact with each other, and if a change is necessary, and how you can be intentionally more together if that's your choice. So
Yeah,
we invite.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Just about those relationship reviews that I like when they're scheduled, because that way it doesn't automatically make us kind of backed up thinking, oh, why are we having this meeting about a relationship? That it's already tabled. We're going to do this, and we're already going to talk and review about what's going well, what is possibly going to make it even better than it is. So we are going to talk about these things. We're going to say everything. We're going to communicate all of the thoughts and feelings, but also the possible invitation to talk about things before they happen, whether it's opening up the relationship or moving in and then not living together afterwards, whatever the modifications might be, that we might talk about it beforehand. It might make it easier to actualize that.
Exactly. And so learning to communicate, but also how to create relationship reviews using the radar method is part of our Poly Mastery program, which we're opening up a new cohort. We'll make sure we include a link in the show notes to find out more information. You can also just reach out to us, book a call, and we will tell you all about it and how to apply. We'd love to get as many people as possible into it. It's going to be amazing. We're going to add awesome, fresh, new content. And so that's pretty exciting. So thank you, Andre, for today.
Thank you, Karen. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
And thank you for suggesting we de-escalate our relationship.
How would you feel if I were? Great. Yeah, I wonder how you might feel when and if I should suggest that we escalate the relationship.
Ooh.
And how would I feel if you resist that or accept
it? Stay tuned and find out.
Well, we can always talk about it, right?
We can always talk about it. Exactly. So we'll also make sure we put in the show notes the link to episode 16, Is It Time to De-Escalate My Relationship? And the 2 Poly Diaries entries that we recorded last year that kind of shared where we were at the time. So thank you again, Andre. Thanks everyone for listening, and have a great day.
Yay.